everybody. Hey. It's Danny here with the X's and T podcast. And I'm really excited, as always. I think I start off every episode saying I'm excited because I am. I have such a passion for this that I don't know that I can ever not have so much enthusiasm about it. But last time we had a fantastic person on to speak with us. And it was the way that her and I had bonded over the fact that we had struggles in our childhoods. So I would love to welcome back Miss Kelley. Hi, Kelley.
Hi.
I'm really excited to have you back because this is something we could talk about it for hours, literally hours.
Oh.
And the last time we left off on this subject, you had said, what do you remember what you said?
Face your fears and go find yourself.
100%. Yes, you did. Since then, I don't know that I faced any fears, but it got me thinking. And actually, you and I were recently having this conversation when it comes to finding yourself, kind of reverting back to what we had talked about, just as a quick reminder that if I do bring up my mom, it is in past tense. It is not speaking to who she is today. I definitely want to say that I am proud of her for making the changes that she needs, for going to therapy, for putting herself first, for doing it for her grandchildren, for her kids. So with that disclaimer being said, we had really kind of dove into, I don't even think we scraped the surface of, some of the things that we went through in our childhood. But I was recently thinking about something that a therapist had said to me once, because I did grow up with a mom who has borderline personality disorder or who did have those narcissistic traits. And it was that kids who are raised with those types of parents often have trouble finding themselves in adulthood.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that too. And it's like we grow up so fast that as kids, we're adults. But then once we're finally adults, we're free from that. And then we're kids again. Also, yes. I've heard of the traumas responses of
fight, flight, or freeze.
Yes. And then I also recently heard one called fawning, and it's basically another survival tactic of like you are imitating the people around you so that you can survive. And that leads to a lot of people pleasing.
Yes. I think the amount of times that we have spoken about this is insane because it's true. When you grow up with a parent, especially being a parent, right? This is the person who is supposed to protect you, who gave you life, who is supposed to be your biggest role model. When they are making you feel like such a bad person, or they smear campaign you, which was my experience, you lose people in your life. As an adult, I'm developing these relationships, but I didn't have those as a kid, or I didn't know how to have healthy ones with other people. And I had friends come and go. I don't really have many friends that I've had since childhood. I have one who is fantastic. I will probably be friends with her forever, thank God. But I think for me, it's wanting to keep people around. And I'm so guilty of like hurting myself in the process of trying to keep a friendship alive because I just want them to like me.
Yep. I mean, like, honestly, if you think about even our friendship and the things that we've gone through, we've had our moments.
Yep.
It is because of what we've been through and what we grew up with and how we watched relationships. And it was our like role model relationships. And that comes into play as you as an adult and how you are in any like friendship, romantic relationships, work relationships, every aspect of your life. It comes into play.
Yeah, it does. And that's the hard thing because like I said, it's like putting others before yourself, which is not necessarily fair for us because the only person that we're ever going to have consistently in our lives, our entire lives, is ourselves. I'm the only person who's going to be a part of my life 100%. I mean, obviously I have kids, but I'm the only one who's known me my entire life. Why would I put other people before me? Simple answer, because I just want people to like me. And it sucks. I hate that. And you're right. We have definitely, because of where we came from, where we were at our periods of time when we met, have had those kind of toxic bonding moments where I don't think either of us really knew how, I don't know that we even recognized the toxicity that we were living in at that time.
Oh, for sure. For sure. We understood that we were both like clicking and like on the same level and being able to have good conversations like this. But we weren't self-aware enough of the cycles that we step into because of certain things that we've been through and our experiences, and how that cycle goes. And if you don't step off.
It's true. It is so true. And I think taking time and healing is really important. That's kind of what we did, was we kind of needed some time for healing. And the fact that I think that's what true friends do though, right? True friends can take some time apart and heal each other. And if they want to be friends bad enough, or it's a good enough connection, you will reconnect. And it's not a bad thing, because we didn't end on bad terms. There was no like knockdown, drag out, dramatic disagreement. It was purely like, okay, someone needs to take a step back, and they did. And then eventually it was like, okay, I think we're both in a better place where we can have a healthier friendship than we did before.
Right.
We're laughing so much because just of the memories that we have together, just like unfathomable. They'll never come to life. The people who, if you know, you know, if you don't know, you'll never fucking know. But the thing is that I think that we reconnected at a really good time, because now we can really share in the healing process. You know, I think that outside of my cousin Tara Lynn, she came on and she talked a lot about raising her children after childhood trauma. And she's somebody that I speak therapy with all the time. And now I also have you, who's also been in therapy, and we can use the same verbiage, and I can really learn from you, which is fantastic.
And I learned so much from you too. And the way that I process is verbally, and just hearing other people's experiences and then being able to like verbally bounce things off, like that helps me tremendously. And that helps me heal, honestly, from all of it. And knowing that, yes, my story from the get-go is an interesting, wild ride. But the fact that I'm not alone in the sense of that other people have been on their own interesting, wild ride, and it sucks, but we're here. And that's great. And we have these connections, and we have these friendships, and we're able to have our friendship therapy.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. I mean, it's really humbling when somebody tells you that they can learn from you, because, you know, I don't think I'm an expert in anything. I'm not a professional, but it's good when we can have those deep conversations about like the struggles that are going on, because then you can kind of deep dive into it and know that this person is not going to judge you. They're not going to have anything negative to say. And I think that that's when you realize that that's a safe person. When somebody starts judging you for something that, you know, you're trying to make a decision, for example, that's an unsafe person. When somebody is going to criticize you, and maybe they look at it as they're not benefiting from it, or that they look bad because of your decision, etc. It doesn't matter. That's not okay. That's a toxic trait in a friendship. That's a red flag. And that's not a safe person. That's when you take a step back and you're like, nope.
And that is their issue, not yours. They should understand the boundary of like, if you're needing someone to talk it through with, they shouldn't be judging you and putting their own ideology on you. They should be understanding that this is you and your life, and you should be living your life how you want to. And that it's really special that that person is coming to you to talk to you about it, and you don't want to push your own self on them, because then they can't be them.
That's true. That is so good. That's a good point, because at the end of the day, what do we want? We want people to be their authentic selves. Otherwise, our friendships are not going to last. And I mean, I know for me personally, my mom could never keep a friend. I don't know that my mom really has friends that she's had long term in her life. That's something that I've always struggled with, was maintaining friendships and maintaining the right type of friendships. Because I can keep a friend for like, let's say 4 or 5 years, but unfortunately down the road, I see red flags that I'm ignoring, and I'm ignoring them because I just desperately want to maintain that friendship. And the only reason it ends is usually on their side, creating some sort of, again, knockdown, drag out sort of disagreement that never needed to happen. I definitely think it's okay for friends to part ways like mutually and cordially. But I also think that keeping friendships that are really toxic is not okay either.
Yeah, totally. Like you want to grow, And so when you're growing, you sometimes outgrow friendships or they outgrow you, and it's okay for those friendships to come and go, but it is how you treat them and how they treat you. And it shouldn't come down to a knockout, drag out, because if it is, you don't have respect and care for people. Like, treat people how you want to be treated, even if they're treating you like crap. And if they're treating you like crap, put the boundary in place of I cannot function with being treated like that. I don't care who it's from, and just say no more. And that is so good to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think when you realize that you can't talk to somebody because you're afraid of their reaction, that's when you know the friendships should be over. And I'm guilty of that, not being able to talk to somebody about things because I've seen their reactions towards other things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I bring this up to them, they're gonna have a cow, or they're gonna ghost me, or it's gonna be one of two, because some people refuse to have conversations face to face, which in this generation is common, but it sucks because these are like really important topics that should be spoken about in person. Because when you're over text, the other person can just ghost. They're not really listening to you. They can come back when they choose at their convenience because they're self-centered or because they're entitled or because of, their lack of empathy. And those are things that we should be able to recognize. And I can't because of how I was raised.
And the other thing is having the conversations in person versus like, heck, even over video like this is so much better in the sense of you can hear and read tone from communicating face to face. Whereas in a text message, you can't read tone. So you could say something and it sound really rude when it's like, I'm just point blanking it. I'm not trying to be rude, but in a text, you can't read tone.
Exactly. Yeah. So it could be anything. And that hardship is definitely one that I never realized was going to impact me in my future. And I don't think that at the time my mother had the foresight of what is my adulthood going to look like? What is this action right now? What is that going to cause in the future? And I mean, obviously I can wish all day long, but I do wish that was the case. I do wish, hey, if I hadn't been allowed to drink at 14, or like I mentioned before, have the significant other live with me at the age of 14, 15, 16 years old, where would my life be today? Could I have healthier relationships?
Right. It's so mind-boggling to think of like how, I don't want to say better parenting, but it is.
It's true.
In a way, because I think the better way to put it is self-care.
Yeah.
For each individual, because if you do have your own self-care and you are taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically the best to your ability, you're going to do so much better for yourself, your kids, your partners, your environment, like everything around you. You will just start thriving so much better. And you will overcome all the things that you've been through and the hardships and the things that are really freaking hard because of all the BS you've been through in your life. Because if you don't take care of yourself, guilty of it, like all fingers pointing at me, okay? All fingers pointed at me, guilty of not taking care of myself. And let me tell you that it was the hardest time of my life when everything in my world seemed to be going wrong. I wasn't taking care of me emotionally, mentally, or physically. And I didn't know how, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I also had the expectation that other people would help me.
Yes. Because I mean, either they're going to do it for you, right? As kind of that thought, like they're just going to help me. It's fine. Or they just ignore it. Like, that's the hard part too, is I feel like when there's no accountability, even in friendships, that it's really, really hard to keep going on in life because you're so tone deaf. And I had that a lot of times too, where I didn't realize how tone deaf I was being. And I didn't realize how shitty of a friend I was being because I wasn't being held accountable. I mean, nowadays, my dad holds me accountable. He's like, if you ever do that to somebody, I swear, I didn't raise you to be like that, which is a good thing. Like he didn't have the opportunity to do that stuff when I was a kid. So even though I'm almost 30, my dad will still lecture me and say, he'll play devil's advocate for other people. He'll be like, well, you treated them like this. Like, this is the reason why this is happening. And thankfully now, like those lessons have been a huge part of my life in my 20s. Now, when I speak to him about things that are like negative, maybe about other people or what have you, I'm just venting to him. He's like, that's probably because other people had different parents. And that's where I really started to think about relating back to the parent that I did grow up with and what did that create for my adulthood and how do we recover from that? That is, I think, something that I still struggle with, but I think that there's so much healing that has been done that maybe we don't recognize. What do you think about that?
It is so hard because like there's been so many times in my life where I'm like, oh, I'm yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've made it so far. I'm good. And then like something like hits you and you're like, I'm not as healed as I thought, but cool. But for me, I know talking it out, like that's huge in my healing process is being able to talk it out. Self-care, lots of self-care.
Yeah.
Having understanding friendship and people in your life. And if don't have those people, don't keep people around that are subtracting from you.
Right. Yeah. I've always heard that if you don't feel refreshed after hanging out with someone, that it's a red flag. If somebody makes you feel drained and bad, or you're nervous to talk to them about something, it's not okay. And I think that's a part of healing too, is being able to be self-aware and recognizing that, like being able to say, I was a bad friend to some people, like it's horrible. I think that in itself is a part of healing for me, is being able to take accountability for my actions, because I can admit when I'm wrong. I will admit when I'm wrong. And I mean, I'll fight till the death when I know I'm not wrong. But I don't know that I was able to take accountability before. And that, I think, is something that I've just now realized is a huge part of healing. And I think you're right. I agree. Talking things out is so helpful for me. It just, the amount of closure that I've gotten since starting this podcast has been really helpful. And talking to you constantly is so helpful as well, because there's just so many things that you understand, or that our listeners who are hearing both of us, like, I think that there's so much that they can gain from hearing our stories, and maybe that'll help them one day want to tell their own.
Right. And like, I keep thinking about our friendship and the things that we've been through and the whole accountability thing. Like, we both are guilty of not necessarily being accountable for our times.
Yeah. But I'm grateful for the times that you did hold me accountable. You were not by any means mean about it either. You were so nicer than I could have ever imagined, which is why I'm so grateful for you, because it was like, you recognize that I was at a point in time in my life in a situation where you're like, I don't think she would have made that decision if these circumstances weren't around. And you also too would look back at your own life and say, what was I doing? Because we have an age difference, not a significant age difference, but a little bit of an age difference. And you would look back and like, okay, what was I doing at that age? And I think that was really helpful for me, because one, it did hold me accountable. Like, yes, I did that. That was stupid. But there was also that, like, it's okay. Like, it was not anything that was so detrimental that we couldn't move forward from it.
Oh, absolutely. And we definitely held hands and made fun decisions together that we were needing to be held accountable for afterwards.
Yeah. Yes.
I honestly think that's part of healing too, because we were able to have that with each other, but also come out of it and not have like the knockout, like end of friendship. We just kind of both, we're going to take some time and then reconnect. And we're both on a better path. And it's not like we were on a horrible path or anything. We're just making better decisions and not staying in our toxic cycle.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was definitely still within that talk. I mean, I lived with my mom. So it's like, no matter how much I said I wanted to be out of that toxic cycle, it was still there. I was still keeping around
Yep.
these toxic friendships that I should have never been in, and it's like, the good thing is that you and I, we didn't start our friendship in regards to something toxic. Like, yes, we've found out through time that we have a lot in common in regards to this, but that is not the basis of our friendship. And my dad said to me recently, he said, when you have a relationship that starts from something toxic, it's not necessarily, I mean, he said it could go well, but I really don't think it's going to be long term. And I really sat back and thought about that. I'm sure that there are plenty of friendships that did start out with things that maybe weren't the best that connected them. But as a pattern that I have seen, it doesn't necessarily mean that that person was a part of your life for no reason. It's just there was a season that needed to be had, and that season is over, especially when it becomes too toxic to you as a person. And I definitely see that, because with my mom, there was nothing but toxic communication with her. It was like, I can't accept a compliment to this day because my mother would be the most horrendous person to me. But then the next day she'd say, "You look so pretty." And it's like, shut up. You're full of shit. Don't fucking say that to me. And it got to the point where I would literally tell her that. She's like, "Oh, you look so cute." I'm like, "Don't say that." And she's like, "Fine, you look ugly then." I'm like, "That's better, because that's what I feel is more authentic from you." And it's that sort of toxicity that really does translate into friendships later on, or into relationships, romantic relationships. I've also had toxic partners that I should have never had because of that same kind of concept.
Well, and it's what you learned as a child. Like, you learned to not accept a compliment.
Yeah.
You learned that you can't be told you look good without feeling like, why are you saying this? Like, you normally are putting me down. Why are you giving me a compliment? And so then when other people in your lifetime give you a compliment, it is so hard to accept, because you think, you're just saying that. My mom just said that. Why should I believe you? And then you're stuck in this mindset, and like, it's so hard to comprehend that people would just give a compliment to be nice. And it's genuine.
Yeah. And then it turns into like not wanting to accept the nice parts of the friendship, but only, and then it's like pushing aside all the red flags. Like, in a weird way, I don't know how to explain it, but it does translate to that. You accept this form of treatment, right? My mom did eventually start saying like, "Oh, you look bad." You know what I mean? And that's what I accepted as my reality, right? So when a friendship seems fantastic, or a relationship romantically seems really great, it isn't until you dig deeper and you really, really go through all the fluff and all the fuzz. And that's when you really start to see, oh my gosh, this is not good. But by the time you see all of that, you're so deep into it that you want to ignore that stuff. I did that for a period of time with my mom. I can honestly say that. Like, I would try to see the best in her no matter what, especially because everyone was telling me she's such a great person. Same with your friendships or your relationships. Oh, everybody loves them. But does everybody really know them? No, nobody really knew my mom. Just like these people who I or others could be having in their lives as their friendships are the type of people who could keep people at arm's length the same way my mom did. But you have to really dig deep to see those toxic features. And it is up to you to either identify them or ignore them. And unfortunately, a lot of us choose to ignore them.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of ignoring them. And it's because even though you hate it, like, you're so uncomfortable, you don't like it, it's toxic, you don't enjoy it at all, but you find comfort in it because it's what you do know. And then once you move into a healthy relationship, you're like, oh, this is uncomfortable, or this is boring. Like, what is this?
Yes.
And then you think that is the bad relationship because it's not what you're used to. And you're like, ooh, but it is healthy. And then we have the struggle of, am I bored in this relationship? Is this relationship actually bad? Or is this a really, really healthy relationship that I'm learning to regulate through? Because part of it is learning to regulate yourself after growing up in the environment that you grew up in, or going through the experiences you've been through.
That's insane, because you're so The amount of times that I've thought that is like insane to me. It is so insane. I just could not fathom that my relationship was healthy. We've been together 4 years now. Obviously, something's going right. It's my longest relationship ever, which is so insane to say. But it's like there's so many things that I had looked at and been like, no, 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 that's not normal. That's not okay. Like I need to leave. But in reality, those things are not at all bad. And I did not realize just how much work a relationship actually takes. Like you have to every single day try to love. I mean, you don't try, like you love this person, but it's like there are moments where you have to work through some really challenging things. I mean, anything from financial struggles to your own toxic friendships. That's, could be interfering with the relationship. It could be maybe hobbies that person is interested in that, you don't like. It could be their friends. It's so many different things that you have to look at and be like, okay, is this worth fighting for? And I didn't know that because I'd never seen that play out in front of me as a kid. Like as a teenager, through those really vulnerable years, it was just my mom and she would go from significant other to significant other to significant other and never last more than a year. I don't even think she had one last an entire year. And I think there's something to say about that. Now, if you are that person, I'm not saying that for you. I'm speaking about my mother, but that is a red flag to me. To people that can't hold relationships long term because of those toxic features.
Right. And if you also think about it, is your mom grew up learning these things.
Yep.
She wasn't just born this way.
Right. Yeah.
So she went through experiences that got her to this point, like to the point that she was as your mother, and learned habits. And it's also, she has to grow through it. And it's so hard because it's so hard. Like, dude, growing up is hard no matter what freaking age you do it at. And it's amazing how, everything that I went through as a kid and how now I'm learning so many different things because I didn't learn them as a kid because of what I was going through. And everyone else was like, oh, this is stuff that I learned as a kid. No big deal. And I'm like, yeah, that's nice. I'm just learning it now.
Yes. No, you're totally right. And that's where I do give grace. It was really hard to want to give grace to somebody like that. Like my mom, I had a lot of hate for my mom, a lot of negativity, a lot of animosity. And it took a lot of years to be like, okay, there's some sort, I need to have empathy for her because something happened. I mean, she grew up in a different time. She grew up with different parents and, she did the best she could with what she knew. I mean, that's just kind of the fact of the matter. Nobody was around to tell her this isn't right. Nobody was sitting there telling her like, hey, this is not acceptable. Can you change that? Like she had so many enablers around her.
Right. And now you get to give yourself the grace as a parent that you are doing absolutely everything you can in your power to be the best person you can be and healing yourself and doing things to be a better parent, to not recreate the pattern. You're breaking the chain and you are healing and you are treating your children differently than how you grew up. And you are even helping your mom grow up.
Thank you. I have a hard time accepting that compliment. I think it's just because I have been with myself my entire parenting years that I genuinely feel like, man, I have done so much wrong. And I think that's just the insecurities within me. I don't know that I could ever view myself as a good parent. So no, I really appreciate that. When you are raised by somebody for years and that's the way that you respond to things, you do end up reverting back to that. And it does suck. It does suck because I'll look at myself in the mirror following that. I'm like, oh my God, I was acting just like my mom right then and there. And that is also hard. It's hard to look in the mirror and admit that to myself and say, fuck, I was acting like my mother. And I hate myself for it right now.
Right. Isn't that always like the worst? And I think it's even a joke where like people will be like, you're going to be just like your mother, just like your father. And you're like, no, I won't. And then you're in the moment and you're like, I don't like that. And then you're so hard on yourself and it's so hard to grow out of those moments, but you do revert back to those if you're not learning your patterns and learning to de-escalate yourself and regulate yourself through those. And when you regulate yourself, you are helping everyone else regulate themselves around you because you are being a role model. Even when it's freaking hard and you're not doing a good job at it, you're still being a great role model for someone to learn to regulate for themselves. And you never know, like, even if you're at a grocery store and you have to regulate your emotions, you never know who's watching you. Some little kid could be watching you and learning from you. Some little kid could have been watching us at the grocery store interacting when we first met.
Right, right. It's like, I want to meet my friend that way. I hope you do,
Right?
sir. I do, or madam, or
Right?
whoever. I hope you do. Child, I hope you do. It's true. And I think even still, because that's how I was raised, like I didn't know it was abuse at the time. Like I
Right.
had no idea that what I was going through as a kid while I was going through it was a form of abuse. And nowadays, like when I see people who have healthy parents, like my brother and my little brother and my little sister, these kids grew up with such different parents than I did, right? They have, my stepmom and they have, my dad in his older, more mature, wiser years. When I was a kid, it was, especially when my parents divorced, it was just my mother. That's all I had. That's all I knew. So when I see that, I'm like, dang, like, what is that like? I thought I was the only one with a parent like mine. I mean, of course, now with the rise of social media, we recognize that people are coming forward about their stories now, but it's isolating. But I did not know that was abuse. You couldn't tell me it was. I was a bad kid. That was it. I deserved it.
Also, isn't it amazing how much isolation happens when there is abuse like that happening? Even if it's self-isolation, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
How much isolation happens. And I have learned pretty quickly that if I am self-isolating, I'm not going to grow. Yes, I sometimes need to rest and take a step back. But if I'm to the point where I'm isolating myself, man, I'm not growing. And I don't think anyone will grow. You can hibernate and take a season off,
Yeah.
but isolation is so unhealthy when you're in it for too long. And with abuse, it happens and you don't know how it happened. Like you'll be in contact with everyone and then 2 months down the road, you'll be like, why am I not talking to anyone? I have no friends. And
Right.
the isolation, and it can be abuse also. And that's when things will pick up harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, when I start to isolate from people, that's when I know something's wrong and I need to ask for help because I'm an extrovert. I love talking to people. I'm a very communicative person. And if I'm isolating, it's because I'm feeding into my insecurities. And then when I don't talk to anybody, I just keep feeling worse and worse and worse. And like sinking down like little by little.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I have to put my hand up and be like, no, I need help. Like, this is not me. Help me out of this and like pull me out because isolation, I don't think is helpful, but obviously I'm not a professional. I can't speak to that. I can just speak to my own situation and know that it's not helpful. And it's hard looking back and being like, dang, like that really was abuse though.
Yeah.
I don't think I realized it until I was in my 20s when I really understood that, okay, this type of behavior is not normal. The way that I'm acting is not okay, but also the way that I was taught to act, the getting so angry so fast and having nothing but the absolute worst to say about somebody. That's not normal. It's not a good reaction. And at the time, there was no telling my mother that there's no calm down button for her or people who are like her. Like what do you say in those moments when you're a kid and you start to feel like these things are not okay, but you just take it. You take it because that's your every single day. That's your norm.
And that's your safety. That's your parent. That's your love. That's your comfort. That's your home. That's everything. That's what you know. And that's what you grow up in. And then you learn all of that. Even if inside of you are like, this is horrible and I don't like it. But you learn the tendencies because you learn how to keep yourself safe and survive in those situations. And then if you don't address them yourself when you're out of the situation or even in the situation, like have you heard of you turn into the 5 people you surround yourself with?
Yes, I have. I have heard that. In fact, you want to know where I heard that from?
Where?
The cult I was a part of. They would always say that. And don't get me wrong though. It was a cult-like environment, but some of the teachings, very few, there were some that were okay. And they would say that. They would say, your 5 closest friends are who you are. They would give you examples like, if your 5 friends smoke weed, you smoke weed. I tell you, I know you smoke weed. If your 5 friends drive trucks, you probably drive a pickup truck or what have you. And that's true. That is true. You are your association. And that helped me a lot, actually. I think when I had joined the cult-like environment is when I really started to understand. But that's because I started picking up books, and not just like the bad books that they would recommend, because they are there, but some of those self-help books where you're like, oh, okay. And that's when it was like a huge just light went off, and I was like, fuck. I hope that answers that question. Sorry, that was long-winded. But yes, I have heard of
No,
that.
you're good. Yeah. But like, it's true in the sense of like, you do pick up, we had our own moments of bouncing off of each other in the sense of like, we were doing certain things. And maybe if one of us wasn't doing that thing, we probably wouldn't have made that decision, right?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And you're right. And I think when you are with good people, right? But maybe it's good people in bad places, kind of like the way that we were, it's just easier to want to disassociate from your real life, which is, I think, what we both did. We didn't like what was going on at home. It was easier for us to just go off and be careless. And as good of idea as that sounds, it was not a good idea. But the good thing is that we have that realization now, and we don't necessarily have to go disassociate now. We can communicate, express the feelings, get it off our chest, and then we can still live in the moment in our lives, but go and do something healthy as opposed to what we were doing before.
We have good old woman stories to tell. Like when we're
Yeah,
old
we
women,
do.
we're going to have such good stories to tell, which is going to be so great, because also I think laughter is a huge part of the healing, and being able to laugh even when it is really crappy of a situation or it's uncomfortable. I know I laugh when I'm uncomfortable, but also laughing through things helps me stay positive and just get to the next step that I have to do. Otherwise, I might just put my heels down and put the brakes on and down and isolate.
But when you isolate and you put the brakes, you stay stagnant. And that's the downfall of that. What's funny is you say that you laugh when you're uncomfortable. I do too. And there's one moment that really like sticks in my head where I was really uncomfortable with a conversation, but I'm just sitting there. And it was when I was in this cult-like environment, and the 2 of the leaders who were supposed to be our counselors, they were talking to me and my ex-significant other in the time about something about him. And it was just, I don't even remember what it was, but it was just like one of those serious topics. I'm like, and the guy goes, "Are you laughing?" I was like, no, I'm sorry. I'm just really uncomfortable right now." And even like in therapy, sometimes during our group therapy, if I have something to say, if I'm laughing, it's only because like, I don't know how else to handle it. I have a dark sense of humor because of everything. Like, I don't know what else to do. Sometimes it's like, I don't want to cry about it anymore. I already have. All I can do is laugh. That's what I have left. I'm not gonna get angry about it anymore.
Right. Plus, I definitely have spent my time crying. But laughter, like it is so good because it just helps you pick right back up and keep going. And uncomfortable situations will just be uncomfortable, but you can giggle through and move on to something
You
that's
have
not
to.
right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's hard to say that, but it's true. It is true. I don't know how else to handle things. And I think that's something that you and I have in common is we just laugh about everything. I mean, sure, we'll get through the tears and get through everything, but eventually it's just like, you can't not laugh at some of this stuff because some of it, you're just like, you find the humor in it. I mean, there's some things that maybe necessarily don't have humor, but you can find a way. Don't underestimate people because
Right.
anything can be funny if you're brave enough. That was a joke. I'm sorry. Bad one. But so when it comes to, the healing aspect of going through that, I didn't know it was abuse. What are some ways that you've taken to heal yourself after, you went through a pretty deep part of your story yesterday before when we had spoken? And what are some things that you've done from that point in your life till now that have helped you overcome that traumatic experience?
Honestly, a lot of reading, a lot of knowledge. I've attended or not a conference. It's like a women's retreat. And I got to learn about trauma and what it does to the brain and how it affects you in every aspect. And all the counseling that's available, which knowing that information is half of it, because when you don't know all of that, you think there is no way anything can ever good happen and any change. So that was really, really helpful. Also my friendships, my people, my core people, you are one of them.
I'm a core person. Hello.
Right. Core memories, self-care, lots of self-care, self-reflection, being open to the idea that I'm toxic too.
Same.
And that was a hard pill to swallow, but you learn it. And that doesn't make me a bad person. But once I'm self-aware, I have to work on it. And if I'm not self-aware, then it needs to be brought up. And so keeping an open mind through it all.
That's good. I really like that. That's a good list of things. Was there anything else that really hits home for you when it comes to healing?
Do the hard things like skydiving. Like, honestly, when you face something that's really hard and you overcome that, it gives you so much momentum to keep going that it spills over into like other areas. So then I really found myself after my first skydiving in the sense of like being able to step into finding who I am as an adult, as Kelley. I'm finding myself, and I'm still figuring out who I am to this day, because I did grow up fawning and people pleasing, and I didn't know myself and I didn't like myself. Now I like myself. Yes, there's things I don't like, but hey, I'm in charge. I get to change those things or keep them.
I love that. That's so good. And it's true. For some reason, I had this viewpoint that when I was in my 20s was when I was going to find myself, and when I was going to for sure know who I was and have all the friends that I was ever going to need. And I'm learning now that that's not true. Like, everybody who are my friends who are above 30 have told me, like, no, I found myself in my 30s. 30s when you really start to see who's going to be around for the long run. Who, you're settling down, you're changing your life, you're really solidifying who you are. And I've always been so scared to turn 30, and I turned 30 this year, and there's still a part of me that's a little bit terrified, but the more I hear, the more I'm excited, because it's true. I would say that all of my like really close friends who I trust, who I've had in my life for a long time, they are all either my age or above. And I think the only person who's younger than me at this point is Jacob. And he's the only person that has maintained, who is younger than me, who has stayed around. And I think you're right when you had said earlier that you grow out of people. And I think that's a huge part of self-care too. Is you have to be able to accept when you grow out of people, and you have to move forward from it, because otherwise it's just you're holding on to something that doesn't fulfill you. And that doesn't need to say that every single thing in your life needs to make you feel over the moon, but there does need to be some sort of fulfillment out of the things that you are holding near and dear to, because otherwise you are feeling negative and taken, what is that, like held back. And those are, I think, things that I've had to really do to help myself. And I agree with you, like everything that you're saying. I think the biggest thing has been the friendship group, because that's the one thing I've struggled with, because I've been toxic. I am 100% guilty of being a toxic person. And I really attribute that to, I didn't know better growing up, and I didn't learn about it until I was an adult. And of course, every single day I can try to be better. There are still going to be people who are going to view me as like the worst person in the world. Fair enough for them. I mean, my dad always says, what other people think of you is not your business. Like, it doesn't matter, especially if they're not a part of your life. The self-care aspect is huge. And I never realized until recently that self-care is more than just going and getting your nails done, and more than just like physical things that you can do for yourself. It's eating better. It's going places. It's skydiving, facing your fears. It's every aspect of your life that is doing things for you. And yeah, and talking is huge, but it's a lot. It's a lot when you've come from something so detrimental in your life, because at the end of the day, yes, we have those memories. Yes, we have that trauma, but it doesn't have to define us anymore.
Yes. Yes. And because like you grow up thinking it is defining of who you are and what you are and who you will be and everything. And that is so scary when you're growing up. And when you get out of it, it doesn't define you. And you have to give yourself grace and forgive yourself for the person you were while surviving it.
What are some of your biggest recovery tips from, maybe people who have been through the same things as us, who have had, toxic parents, or people who are exiting toxic relationships, just any negative thing? What are some tips that you would recommend for people who are at any phase in their healing journey?
Make sure you have good friends. And if you don't, reach out, find a group that you can connect with. Because I promise you, some crazy girl will flag you down at the grocery store because you have the same shirt on. People will come in your life when you need them. They will. You have to be open to it. And that I know personally that's been part of my healing is I've tried to close myself off from people. It won't help, I promise. So find a group, find people, find your person, find accountability for yourself. Don't beat yourself up, and get excited and learn and get excited for who you get to be, because you get to decide.
That's really good. And that's true. I think that when people, overcome traumas, it's hard when you have to face what you've been through. I mean, from SA, from DV, I try to be careful with the words that I say, but it rhymes with great. It's very challenging. Those are situations where you almost blame yourself. I can't speak to every situation, but you blame yourself for a while. And I would say that you're right when you say don't blame yourself. Like, take accountability for what you can do for yourself, but don't blame yourself for things that you had no control over. Like, if you were abused, like, that's not your fault. You never asked for it. It was never something that you had ever intended to be a part of. For people to sit there and victim blame and all these other things, like, it's nonsense. When we say take accountability, it doesn't mean that you need to say that you're the one in the wrong. It means you get to be who you want to be. And this is your narrative, your story that you get to either speak or don't speak, doesn't matter, whatever you want to do. But that's what we mean when we say accountability. Therapy. I would 10 out of 10 recommend therapy.
Yep. And again, on the accountability, it is basically like in the sense of I'm now accountable for how I act and react. And so therefore I want to and need to be accountable for myself and how I am, not taking on, and not taking on the things that are not my fault, because they're not, and they're not your faults. If
it's happened, like it's not our fault that we had parents the way that we did, it's just the draw of the card. There's no way that, and of course they didn't choose the parents that they did that made them that way. And I think that's the biggest thing that we really wanted to talk about is how has narcissistic parenting impacted us as children, and how did it further impact us as adults? But I think we also wanted to connect on the recovery. How do we cope with that? And how can you cope with that if that's something that you are going through? And hopefully you're not. If you're in a safe place, I'm so glad you're in a safe place. If you're in an unsafe situation, the domestic violence hotline, that is a very safe place to call. I will link it in the episode description, because it doesn't matter who it is. If you need help, you need help. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. We just want to be here as advocates, because we didn't necessarily have the best advocates growing up. And if we can be advocates, we want to. So hopefully somebody gained something from this. I know we did.
Because I definitely, growing up, I didn't feel safe to talk about any of it ever. And I remember going to counseling. I remember at one point CPS was involved in my childhood, and I refused to talk about anything. And I didn't feel like I had someone safe that I could express everything to. And the domestic violence hotline is definitely like, they are amazing and will help you know what to do next if needed.
It's a no judgment zone. You can call in and be anonymous. It doesn't matter. Like just ask for help. That's the one thing I really wish I would have done when I was younger, was ask for help. Because even though it feels normal, we all have that instinct within ourselves that we feel it. This is not okay with me. This makes my body uncomfortable. This makes me upset. Okay. It's okay to feel like that. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, this is uncomfortable. Can you tell me if this is safe or not? Because maybe we don't know. I know I didn't know as a kid whether what was going on at home was safe or not. I've learned now that it's not, but I didn't know back then. And if somebody would have asked me, I probably would have said, no, nothing's going on. But if they would have asked me, what did your morning look like? And I would have said, well, my mom did X, Y, and Z. They probably would have said, no, that's not safe. And my cousin Tara Lynn, she did on her episode as well. She said, if somebody had come up and asked me if I was not okay, I probably would have told them. But at the end of the day, not everyone's going to ask us, are you okay? And I just really hope that people ask for help and feel confident enough in themselves to ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you ask for help and that person can't help, keep asking for help. Go find someone who can, because there is help. Because I remember you trying to open my eyes. Yeah, you.
It's like we're talking about me.
I remember you tried to open my eyes to the abuse I was experiencing, and I didn't think it was abuse. And now when I look back, I'm like, what? Wow, what was going through my head? Because that's abuse.
Yeah. And it's hard when you can see it from the outside, because not everybody can. And even when you're in it, people are telling you this is not okay. Like friendships or relationships, you have people telling you like, this is not a good friend. Like you need to stop being friends with this person, or you need to stop dating this person, or your job is really unsafe. Like stop doing it. Like we don't tend to want to believe that, especially if it's coming from somebody we haven't known as long or as well as our partner. And you're the one who told me that. You're the one who said, when I had been telling you about a situation that was going on and I wasn't listening to my partner, and you said, well, it's because you're listening to somebody you've known longer that you thought you could trust. But in reality, your partner was right. And it can happen. So it's all around us. We just have to open our eyes to it and not be afraid to say it when we see it. But it's also hard to say it when you see it. It's hard. It's hard to say, like, I don't think you're in a safe situation right now. Like, unless you really trust somebody, I don't know that I'd go up to a stranger and be like, hey, I don't think you're in a safe situation. But that doesn't mean that you can't make an anonymous phone call either. You can absolutely, I've done that for somebody. I have called the domestic violence hotline and been like, hey, I don't know what to do about this situation. I think somebody might be in an unsafe space. What can I do? And they helped navigate that situation for me. And they can help you too. So if you see it, say something, but you don't have to say it directly to that person if it's not safe for them or you.
They would be so helpful. They really will. And they know the legal side of it all, and will keep you safe and everyone else safe in the situation too.
Yeah. Wow. That was heavy. Yeah. I mean, I'm really grateful if you're here listening. Again, I really hope that we were able to help you with this. And it's so healing to be able to talk about this kind of stuff and to be able to hopefully make a difference somewhere. But if anything, thank you for listening to our stories and making us feel heard. Kelley, thank you so much for coming and again being a guest. We are so grateful to hear from you because, I mean, from what I understand, this is not something that you were so outspoken about. So for you to trust this environment to come and speak on these things is amazing. So thank you for trusting me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love talking with you.
Thank you guys so much for coming. If you want to please follow. Okay. You can follow us on Instagram at XsandT_podcast, TikTok at XsandT_podcast. You can Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I upload Tuesdays and Fridays. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next time.